The first is that for all of us, we injure the brain that we have. So for older adults who suffer a brain injury through a fall or some other mechanism, they're injuring a brain that may be dealing with some of the issues that can arise later in life with mild cognitive impairment or something to that effect. But when it comes to mental health, if someone has a mental health disorder and is dealing with an issue with depression or anxiety or some other mental health problem, and then sustains a traumatic brain injury, whether that's a concussion or something more significant, we see that those two things don't play nicely in the sandbox, and we can see an exacerbation of the underlying mental health disorder. And we've taken to view that as something called a maladaptive response. And so a person who may have his major depressive disorder under check and then sustains a traumatic brain injury is now in a position where that spirals out of control, in addition to dealing with the recovery from the traumatic brain injury. So that's on the one side, is we injure the brain that we have. And if we have a pre-existing mental health issue, it can be exacerbated in the aftermath of a traumatic brain injury. But on the other side is that traumatic brain injuries can produce this really, really fascinating set of consequences. And we have seen these really amazing examples of people who, after a traumatic brain injury, develop a skill they've never had before. So people are magically now able to play a musical instrument after never having touched an instrument in their life, or they develop linguistic skills and are accelerating in the capacity to speak multiple languages, a skill that they didn't have before their traumatic brain injury. And those are the good stories, and those are the fascinating stories. But there's a whole parallel set and a much, much longer list of stories of concerns. And so people who were in a situation where they were not facing a mental health issue develop a mental health problem in the aftermath of a traumatic brain injury. And that is the manifestation of their TBI. And we also know that approximately 30% of people who sustain a traumatic brain injury go on to meet the clinical definition of having post-traumatic stress disorder. So these are huge, huge implications. And I'll just lay one other thing, which is that almost 5 million people a year in the United States seek care for a traumatic brain injury. It is a huge public health situation. It's a public health epidemic, 5 million people a year. And all it takes is a small percentage of them to be facing a serious issue with mental health, whether that's an exacerbation of a pre-existing one or a new mental health struggle in the aftermath of traumatic brain injury, to realize that this is a major problem that we need to get much better as a country of how to help people in these situations.